Hello, I think everyone already noticed that FiiO are in good shape and they announcing one good release after another, and I have a big queue of products and many of them is still coming, but I decided to start with one of the most affordable and actually one of the most asked for. It's the portable digital to analog converter or dongle adapter. Many names exist for that segment of devices. It's FiiO and Jade Audio KA3. Actually, it's labeled as FiiO, but in some places also offer sister company of FiiO, Jade Audio, is also mentioned. And I wanted to say that FiiO actually ignored this segment of dongle digital to analog converters, but they didn't. They have a long history of creating portable digital to analog converters. They started with E7 and it was a really mind-blowing model for that time when it was announced. It was a game changer for many because it was one of the first devices that allowed to achieve nice, good sound in the portable segment for really affordable price. And they did some experiments like Q1, I1, different type of portable digital analog converters. But after that, they focused on bigger devices. And actually, their offer for the portable dongle segment were the Bluetooth receivers, because BTR3, BTR5, they can work as USB digital to analog converters and they are pretty good in that segment. But finally they decided to release a separate device with USB power. It's built with ES9038 Q2M digital to analog converter chip. As you can see, it supports high resolution DSD 512. Really good in terms of power, 130 milliwatts for 32 ohms load from single-ended output, and twice more, 240 from the balanced out. Price is $80 or $90, depending on taxes and fees. And actually, enough talks, let's have a closer look. As you can see, package is stylish. It has nice, interesting foiling effect, and at the same time it's even not traditional paper, it's some kind of plastic. And inside of this cool sleeve we are getting manual, device itself. Let's unpack it this way. Device itself and small set of accessories. So let's see what we are getting here. It's actually pretty expecting. Small USB Type-C to USB Type-C cable and USB Type-A adapter to connect it to laptop or desktop or something like that. Pretty compact and nice solution. So let's move that aside and let's have a closer look. So it's pretty compact, built completely of metal, so feels really nice in hand. Simple but good looking shape. And here is LED indicator. It has 3 colors indicating low resolution, high resolution and DSD separately. On the one end it's just USB Type-C to connect the cable. On the other end there are 2 outputs, single-ended and Pentagon one, so you can use modern balanced jacks. And what else can we say? Cable itself is really soft, feels durable and flexible, so I hope it will serve for a long time. And you can use some cables with lightning adapter, but in stock there is no such cable, unfortunately, but of course it's easy to get the extra one. It can be used with Android smartphones with FiiO own players, so in this aspect it's pretty universal and minimalistic device. Feels solid, feels nice, well built. Unfortunately there is no buttons for volume control, but luckily we have a control application that I will show you now. As a companion app, here used FiiO control. You can install it for your device and use to control the KA3. As you can see, it's in the list and I already connected to it, and you can see the device, firmware version. You can turn off status indicator if you don't like it. It's actually not really bright, so it won't be bothering. You can select output impedance, low and high. So low is for low impedance earphones, high is for models that is above 100 ohms of impedance. And you can select gain, low and high. Actually, in vast majority of situations, low will be more than enough. And here you can select and change the device volume. You can change the channel balance. Actually, it's at the 0 position. And you can select one of the low pass filters. Here are charts that showing what filters do, but actually their impact on the sound isn't big. As you can see, amount of settings isn't big, but at the same time it's the basic things that you want to control for the USB digital to analog converter. And of course, about the sound, I built a simple setup with FiiO M11 as a transport and KA3 as digital to analog converter. Pretty unexpected, yeah? And FiiO's one of two FiiO new in-ear monitors. It's FA7S. Actually, they will be subject of one of the next reviews. You can see that they are beautiful. So, but meanwhile they just laying on the table to make everything more exciting and interesting. In terms of sound, it's a pretty good digital to analog converter, pretty natural with good resolution and technicality, but at the same time with slightly added dynamics to sound more lively and engaging. Basically, it's, you know, the sound that targeted towards the wide audience. It doesn't use some excessive coloration like adding to a lot of additional weight or trying to make something softer, to make some contrast, some accent on the micro contrast. It doesn't do anything that. It just works and actually do it pretty nicely. Of course, I forgot to mention that it's draining the battery power, but actually it's not the super hungry. It's definitely not power light, and it's a hungry boy, but not among the most hungriest. It's somewhere in between. Probably I need to find some way to measure this aspect more precisely and correctly, but I will think about that a bit later. Anyway, let's talk about the sound step by step. So low frequencies goes to really good depths and they are controlled well, with common exception for the dongle digital to analog converters with power hungry load. Sometimes they just not receiving enough of power from the source. But if you don't using some really tough to drive cans, you won't face this issue, and the low frequencies will remain absolutely good, impactful, tight, with nice resolution, not trying to be super fast or dry, but with a good resolution, proper amount of small nuances and details. So, not trying to be super resolving, but for this tire resolution is pretty well and impressive. And keep in mind that it's not the model for those who want highlighted low frequencies, who want additional weight. They won't add additional bass or try to subtract it. So no, in terms of frequency response, probably it's totally flat. Actually, not probably, it's totally flat, but sources are usually flat here. But it's not trying to change anything, and that makes it pretty universal, meaning what you connect to it, you get. If you connect some bass heavy model, you'll get bass heavy sound. If you connect something natural and resolving, you'll get natural and resolving sound. What KA3 does, it just controls the load pretty nicely, and it suits really well both synthesized low frequencies and something with real instruments or acoustic instruments. And just a small example, it's John McEuen, Excitable Boy. Here present nice acoustic bass, and it sounds not forward, and at the same time not hidden, so it requires some natural low frequencies, and that digital tone-off converter does that. And at the same time it renders the body of this bass pretty well in the engaging way. Mid frequencies are natural in terms of not trying to add something. It's definitely not the digital tone-out converter for those who like the representation focused on the micro contrast, for those who like analytical, thin and absolutely natural sound. And at the same time it's not the model for those who like some coloration. It slightly boosts dynamics and emotions, but not as much as some other competitors does. And at the same time, what is present in record, it delivers nicely with good resolution, nice amount of nuances, proper weight distribution, and I like that with good recorded tracks. It gives nice body both for vocal and instruments. Imaginary stage is above average both in width and in depth, and in this aspect it also behaves pretty well. And as an example for the mid frequencies, my favorite track by Iron Maiden, Aces High from Power Slave album. I like studio version, I like live version with Churchill's speech, one of the greatest ideas in the history of metal. But anyway, it's not the superbly recorded track, but at the same time it requires a good amount of technical performance from the digital tone-off converter, but this track hates natural and monitoring digital tone-off converters because it starts sounding too aggressive and unnatural absolutely. And luckily KA3 performs well with this track, not trying to go into the micro contrast. And treble, it has good extension and it has a slight hint of added energy. Not too much, but I wanted to mention because it just makes some emphasis on the treble area, not of course in terms of frequency response once again, but in terms of additional clarity and forwardness. I won't say that it's bright or something like that, no, treble is natural, but slightly highlighted by that small details that is present in the treble area are slightly highlighted. Extension is good, not great, but good. And of course, basic overtones are here, but layering is really basic. Of course, it's not some kind of audiophilic treble with rich saturated details. But it doesn't pretend to be. And as an example, it's another my favorite track. It's Pink Floyd, High Hopes. Maybe my tastes are not traditional, but I'm a fan of Gilmour and I like this final. Of course it's not the final album, but it's the final album of Pink Floyd itself. Endless River, of course, is a nice addition, but it's not like a full-featured Pink Floyd album, but it's still great, of course. Anyway, High Hopes, it's just the magnificent thing, one of the pinnacles of Gilmour's masterpiece, and the introduction, that ambience and keyboard intro, all that stuff is done greatly. Of course, to represent it fully, it's better to have more expensive gear with better treble performance, with layering and so on, but still KA3 behaves pretty well with it, delivering it nicely. So to summarize everything, really good sound. Actually, in one of the interviews, James from FiiO mentioned that FiiO won't be releasing affordable players in the near future because dongle DACs just cannibalized that segment. And actually this thing is FiiO's answer for that. It's their substitution for the entry-level players, and the digital tone-off converter definitely performs well in this segment. Don't expect some giant killer, but it's really honest device, good for the price. Speaking about the pairings, what I like here is a black background. It's really silent, even with pretty sensitive models. If you won't use high volume, you most probably won't meet background noise. and it drives high impedance models pretty well. Of course, not perfectly, because 300 ohms models or 250 ohms models are created for the desktop gear first of all, but at least you can listen them normally. Not great, but okay. And I also did A/B tests to compare the outputs. Thanks FiiO for replaceable connectors. It's really nice thing to have, really convenient. So you can unscrew, you can replace the jack, and basically, okay, I will need, yeah. So you can unscrew it, you can replace jack, and you can use the same earphones with both outputs. Just need some volume matching to perform blind test properly, and I did that, and there is no big difference between the outputs. Of course, if you have power hungry cans, it's better to use them with balanced out. It will give more power and they will sound better from the balanced. But with sensitive IMs, if you volume match the output, the difference isn't big. So if you have just 3.5mm cable, you will be totally okay here. And speaking about the compressions, probably you know the closest rival in the FiiO's world, it's BTR5. BTR5 is slightly less natural with less accent on the energy and dynamics. This one is a bit more energetic and a bit more fun sounding. And what I reviewed recently, Jade's S9 Pro, it's much more analytical, much more focused on the micro contrast. It's just the different idea in terms of sound. Shanling's digital tonal converters are basically warmer with more weight and less bright sound. And iBasso actually DC04. DC04 is a bit more forward, slightly more aggressive and more focused on the dynamics. There were some other digital tonal converters, but I'll be honest, I didn't do A/B compressions, so that's the models that I did the compressions. Of course, iBasso DC05 is coming and it's pretty interesting to compare them, but even without that comparison, I can say that FiiO released a really good portable digital to analog converter that gives you a great value for this size and price. So thank you for listening, thank you for your attention, and of course have a nice day.